Good morning, eighth grade history. It's Wednesday, November the 4th, 2020. And this morning we're going to be reading this week's primary source document and answering questions found on page 1 through 3, or page 4, 1 through 3. Copy the question on a lined sheet of paper, and I want you to put the proper heading, your name and date, subject, and assignment. So whenever I read something for academic purposes and it's telling me to answer some questions, first thing I do is I go back and read those questions. So I'm going to do that. Question number 1. Explain why James Madison is called the father of the Constitution. Number 2. Why was religious freedom included in the First Amendment? And question number 3. Explain the importance of the Federalist Papers. So, I'll sit there and I'll kind of look through this. We're going to start on page 1. Opposing sides in government, nothing new. In 1787, the Constitution of the United States was written, but it still had to be ratified or approved by the states. As the states began to discuss the Constitution, two main groups led the arguments: the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. How could each group convince others that their opinion was correct? There was no internet or television, so they wrote essays and pamphlets to share their thoughts. The Federalists were in favor of the Constitution and began writing essays describing why America needed a strong central government. Although they were published anonymously at the time, historians knew that these 85 essays had these three authors: Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and James Madison. Their essays worked to convince others that the United States needs a strong federal government that would unite the states and protect them from other countries. When people today read the Federalist Papers, they learn what the writers of the Constitution were thinking when it was written. Not everyone agreed with the Federalists. Another group of people thought that the new Constitution made a country look too much like the British system. Leaders such as Patrick Henry, Samuel Adams, and George Mason wrote essays of their own. They wanted states to have more control than the federal government. They also worried that the Constitution did not protect individual rights of the citizens of the United States. A compromise was reached. To make anti-federalists happy, the Bill of Rights was added. It protected the basic rights and privileges of American citizens. Of the United States. The Bill of Rights also says that the states have all powers not found in the Constitution. This way, both states and the federal government make laws and have their own powers. The Federalists were happy because the Constitution was ratified like they wanted. Do arguments about government sound familiar? Lawmakers in today's government still do not agree about state and federal powers. Now, different sides give their opinions in newspapers, magazines, television, and the internet. When the two sides cannot agree, the court system will decide who is right. The 1950s civil rights movement is one example. The courts used the 14th Amendment of the Constitution to make southern states treat all people equally. Hamilton. Who was Alexander Hamilton? The subject of Lin-Manuel Miranda's musical Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton is an important founding father. Not only did he co-author the Federalist Papers, he also created the first Bank of New York. He hated slavery and as the musical shows spoke his mind no matter what, he never became president of the United States. Born in the British West Indies, Alexander Hamilton became an orphan at age 13. He worked as a clerk until a terrible hurricane hit the island where he lived. Hamilton published a description of this hurricane, which a wealthy man named Hugh Knox read. Knox was so impressed with the writing that he paid for Hamilton to immigrate to the United States in 1773. Hamilton studied at King's College and became an advisor for George Washington once the American Revolution began. After the war, Hamilton was elected as a delegate to the Constitutional Convention. He helped write the Federalist Papers and then became George Washington's Secretary of the Treasury in 1789. In a famous duel, Aaron Burr killed Alexander Hamilton in 1804. His wife Eliza lived 50 more years and spent the rest of her life working to preserve her husband's legacy and raise money for charities. Without Eliza Hamilton, history may not remember all of the ways Alexander Hamilton influenced the development of the United States of America. The Constitution. Although it seems normal now, the Constitution created a very new type of government. Citizens of the United States were used to living in a monarchy. A monarchy is ruled by a king or queen, and that ruler makes all the decisions. Two philosophers named John Locke and Baron de Montesquieu had different ideas. These philosophers believed in a social contract between a government and its people. This means that all people have rights and that the government should protect those rights. Many of the founding fathers read Locke and de Montesquieu and agreed with them. The 1776 Declaration of Independence first talked about the rights of people, stating, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." Later, individual rights were guaranteed in the Bill of Rights, which was passed in 1791. The Founding Fathers wanted to be sure that America did not become a monarchy with one person in charge. This is why the Constitution outlines 3 branches of government with checks and balances. American government has these equal branches of government: the executive branch, the president, the legislative branch, Congress, and the judicial branch, courts. The legislative branch is the House of Representatives and the Senate. These two groups pass laws. The executive branch is the president who signs or vetoes laws. Finally, the judicial branch of the courts and judges make sure the laws follow the Constitution. Think of a tree with 3 branches that are all the same size. Each of the branch has an equal role and makes sure the other branches do their jobs correctly. This is known as checks and balances. The Constitution created a federal government. Some people worried that this new federal government would be too powerful and take away rights from the states. They wanted states to have more control. The Federalist Papers argued that a strong federal government is necessary. The Federalists said that a strong central government would help protect the United States from other countries. This government would be able to collect taxes. It would also unite the states and make them stronger as they work together. The states also needed a federal government to protect them from other countries. The Constitution and Bill of Rights set up a government and protected rights. Do you notice that the rights of some groups of people are missing from the original Constitution? While the Bill of Rights guarantees freedoms, it did not always apply to all people living in the United States. Many African Americans were enslaved and did not enjoy those rights. American Indians were also not considered citizens of the United States. Women were denied some of the rights that men had. For example, women had to wait for the right to vote until 1920, when the 19th Amendment was passed. African Americans waited even longer. The 15th Amendment was passed in 1870 and should have let all African American men vote, but in many places that did not happen. In 1965, the Voting Rights Act was passed, which finally made sure all citizens 21 and older could vote. Today's Constitution guarantees the same rights for all. The father of the Constitution. It is May 1787, and 57 men are meeting in a small Philadelphia room. They know they have a big job at this Constitutional Convention. Their goal is to amend or change the Articles of Confederation, which is the current government framework for the states. It has not been working the way they would like. But once they're at the meeting, the delegates decide that they need a whole new system of government. They need a central government that will work with the states. They then seek guidance from James Madison. James Madison helped write the Virginia Constitution 11 years before. It worked very well in Virginia. At the Constitutional Convention, these delegates used the Virginia Plan as a model to help them develop the Constitution as we know it. James Madison did the most recording during these meetings, taking notes on what was said and the changes they made. He believed that the United States needed a strong central government in order to stay united and work with other countries. When the Constitution was complete, James Madison knew it would take hard work to convince all the states to ratify it. He worked with John Jay and Alexander Hamilton to write the Federalist Papers. Madison wrote 29 of the 85 essays. Virginia was one of the last states to ratify, and James Madison's essays helped get the final votes. James Madison also was the one who proposed the Bill of Rights in Congress. He felt that individual freedoms and rights are very important, and he helped draft many of the amendments. Today, James Madison is known as the father of the Constitution because of all the work he did on both the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Without James Madison, the government of the United States would not look the way it does today. I'm going to stop here for this morning. We will finish reading it on tomorrow, on Thursday. And today's history code word is vote. Vote. Thank you.